Good Lord, it's enormous!
It is huge, isn't it?
Oh, isn't it beautiful?
Ah yes, now on BBC Three, behind the scenes once again, and it seems not only did Nintendo have Super Mario, but they also had some super shady secrets right in the midst of their outrageous fortunes.
Hello!
He's the biggest icon of the computer game generation.
Mario! Mario!
Better known than Mickey Mouse.
Hi, I'm
Mario!
That's Mario, I'm Libby. Welcome to the world of Nintendo.
Here we go!
The little Italian-American in a boiler suit has revolutionised the world of games and catapulted the Nintendo brand around the world.
When I was 8 years old, just took us by storm. It was the coolest video game system we'd ever seen.
It was amazing. I played before I went to school. I played when I got home from school. Anytime in between.
You know, there's games that have secret codes in them, and these secret codes are just like Easter eggs that just keep you hunting and keep you coming back for more.
Nintendo has made countless friends, but at times its business ethics have been questioned.
Nobody's going to seriously believe that a company that's run by a lawyer like yourself, that you wouldn't know exactly what was being said by your sales force. Wasn't that a policy to threaten people to a certain degree?
No, I like to compete, and I like to compete aggressively.
Are you distancing yourself from those comments?
My point is, there was a business that was making a lot of money, that had a large market share, and that tends to bring out lawsuits.
Nintendo has found itself under attack over claims their games trigger epileptic seizures.
We rolled him over. He had been foaming, so we called the paramedics who came, and that's the first question they asked me. Had he been playing video games?
Nintendo rose from obscurity in Japan in the 1980s. In just a few years, they were earning as much as all the Hollywood movie studios combined.
Nintendo came from nowhere, then suddenly the company was everywhere. They were ruthless, they were creative, and they were unbelievably successful.
Behind Nintendo are two very different men. Shigeru Miyamoto is the childlike genius who created Mario and became the first celebrity of the games world. Hiroshi Yamauchi is the Iron Man of Japanese business, a control freak who exploited Miyamoto's talent and became a billionaire.
So what is their game, and what's the real story behind Nintendo? It's my quest to find out.
Modern Techno Japan. This is where I would start my quest in search of the men behind Nintendo's billions. Kyoto, Japan's spiritual centre. More temples than you can count and a history lost in time. This is where Nintendo grew up and is still based. In 1950, a young man inherited the family business from his grandfather. Hiroshi Yamauchi's first act as head of Nintendo was to sack his own cousin. He wanted a free hand as undisputed boss. And it was Yamauchi's obsession for total control, this ruthlessness, that would bring global success and an enormous personal fortune. But getting an audience with Mr. Yamauchi isn't easy. He's got a reputation as a recluse and rarely gives interviews. I needed help, so I asked Kunio Kadawaki, a local journalist, to take me to Mr. Yamauchi's house in a Kyoto suburb and find out a bit more about him.
Kunio, you've been trying to find people that can tell us something about Mr. Yamauchi, haven't you? How have you got on?
I called many people, and unfortunately, all of them refused to talk on cameras.
Why is that?
He's such a powerful man, like emperors.
Like an emperor?
Yes.
God, no wonder they won't talk. So is that building there with the white wall Mr. Yamauchi's house?
Yeah, that's his house, Hiroshi Yamauchi's house. It's a huge house by Japanese standard, and he has been living there for more than 50 years.
What have you found out about his sort of family history?
His father left Hiroshi when he was 5 years old, and they never met each other later on.
So he never saw his dad again?
Hiroshi attended his father's funerals.
Although the emperor's own doctor used to live here, it didn't look like a billionaire's house. Tucked away in an insignificant backstreet of Kyoto, and no one was at home. I was told one way to meet Yamauchi was through Go, the traditional Japanese game of strategy. The Japanese believe Go is a way to sharpen business skills, and Mr. Yamauchi is a sit-down expert. I was keen to find out more.
So what is the sort of overall aim of the game?
You have to build your territory. You put your stones on the board and try to take off your opponent's stones. The one with the biggest territory wins, basically.
I'm trying to meet a businessman who's also a sit-down Go player. Can you understand why his Go game will have helped his business strategy?
A successful businessman has to be good at numbers. Go is also a numbers game. Players constantly assess the current situation to foresee the outcome.
Rogers knows Yamauchi's prowess at Go firsthand. He was desperate to work for Nintendo and got an audience with Yamauchi by challenging him at Go. Since then, they've had several rematches.
So have you seen Mr. Yamauchi many times since that first meeting?
Oh, many times. I'm the only one in the industry that plays Go with him.
Just a little bit, baby. I'm getting home.
He's a very strong Go player, and he's tough as nails. And everybody in the company, how can I say, shudders when they're in his presence because he's so powerful. They don't speak without his permission.
I was eager to test out my Go skills.
He is absolutely serious, like he's trying to win a championship game every single time. When you play against him, you're drawn into that same atmosphere, and you better give him a good game or you're wasting his time. He's tough. He's the toughest businessman I know. When he makes a decision, it's yes or no, and he doesn't change his mind.
Hank made a computer version of Go for Nintendo and took it to Mr. Yamauchi. He was amazed when he couldn't even use one of his own games consoles.
It's like he'd never held a joystick in his hand before from a Nintendo machine, and he was trying to play, and finally he got frustrated and he gave the joystick to the guy sitting next to him, and he said, okay, I want to go there, and he hit the monitor. I want to go there, I want to go there, I want to go there, and the guy moved the cursor and made the move.
At its height in the early 1990s, Nintendo was making profits of over $1 billion a year and became Japan's most successful company. It's a brand known around the world. Mr. Yamauchi is now worth $1.5 billion.
You can buy this stuff all over Japan. It's instant rice, and Yamauchi himself tried to get into the instant rice business in the 1960s. Quite a revolution.
Japan wasn't quite ready for instant rice though. It failed. He got a Del Boy figure as he tried anything and everything to make a quick buck, including a taxi firm, which he later sold when he was strapped for cash.
Hello, konnichiwa.
And something called a love hotel.
Thank you.
My friend Mai agreed to take me to discover just what that involved.
Sad love hotel. Can't wait to find out what that's all about.
Do you know that when Mr. Yamauchi owned this taxi firm, he also owned a love hotel?
I knew about his taxi business, but not about the Love Hotel.
A bit of a mystery then, even better.
Here we go. Oh, Love Hotel. This one with the red couch. TV mirror effect. Nice huge television. So many rooms, so little time.
Love hotels are a very Japanese institution. They are where couples, notoriously bosses and their secretaries, go for those very private moments.
Trip of love. Oh my word. That's no ordinary hotel room. So there's 3 rooms and they all share this same swimming pool. Should we have a look in the bedroom?
As condoms, yeah?
Oh, right. What sort of people rent these rooms?
Couples from the age of 20 to 60 or 70.
Just couples?
Sometimes 2 women, or sometimes 2 men.
Right, I think I'm getting the picture. Okay, so you're at the height of discretion and you don't ask who these people are. That seems very, very wise. So from love hotels like this one to video games, Mr. Yamauchi's had quite a career path.
You know, this kind of place is always covered because nobody wants to be seen coming in. For example,
I was no closer to meeting Mr. Yamauchi. But I contacted somebody who'd been granted a rare audience.
Mr. Takahashi, I've been trying for weeks to get a meeting with Mr. Yamauchi and I'm having absolutely no success. You're one of the few people that's actually spoken to him, you've met him. What did you think of him as a man?
When I first met him, as you do in Japan, I gave him my name card and he gave me his. My first question was that I wanted to write a book called Nintendo's Business Method. He suddenly slapped the card I gave him on the table and shouted, "Is there such a thing as Nintendo's Business Method?" And he glared at me like this.
And one of the things that stands out about him is that he came from a very sort of disrupted family home, like his childhood was quite broken. Do you think that could have contributed to the way he behaves now?
I think so. He was always given enough money, but his childhood was lacking in parental love, having been brought up by his grandfather. I think his personality developed in a very abnormal environment.
I was learning more about this mysterious man. In the 70s, Mr. Yamauchi had a long way to go in business, but his creativity soon became obvious.
So I'm sat here waiting for a couple who are bringing me something called a love tester. Now this is one of the first products that Mr. Yamauchi moved into when he went from making cards to making games. I'm not entirely sure what a love tester is. All I do know is that there aren't many left in Japan, but I did track this one down. They're bringing it all the way from Osaka to here in Kyoto. Fingers crossed it works when they get here. Just sat waiting for them now.
The look of love is in your eyes.
Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Kato. Konnichiwa. Nice to meet you. Lovely to meet you. Thank you for coming all this way. Oh, that's pretty small. I expected something enormous. And perhaps flashing and pink. Wow, that really is an antique. This is some sort of magnetic or electronic device that's testing whether or not this couple are in love. And as you can see, they aren't, which is a slight problem for your marriage. I think what we need to do is take this out onto the streets and get some red-blooded Kyoto teenagers to road test it, and then we'll see if we can actually get the old boy to work. First victims. Konnichiwa. Can I test whether or not you love each other? Do you mind? You hold that one. Oh, I don't know, it's flickering. I would say that you are fond of each other. You're most definitely exhibiting all the signs of being thoroughly, deeply in love. This gentleman didn't come with a lady, so we're going to have to test it together. Oh, it's not bad. It's not bad. I think what that shows is we need to get to know each other a bit better. That's not bad at all. It's touching 30, which is a good job considering you have a child.
Bye-bye.
Still hungry to make the big time, Yamauchi's vision recognised computers as the future of games. Then, a stroke of luck. A young designer called Shigeru Miyamoto came asking for work. Miyamoto went on to create Mario, which made Nintendo into a global brand and lifted Mr. Yamauchi into the billionaire bracket. Miyamoto was one of many keen young designers who turned up for work in company uniforms and were paid mere salaries to keep Mr. Yamauchi in game hits. Yamauchi, tough and aggressive as ever to the outside world, showed a gentler side to his creative underlings.
Well, we're not paid glamorously for developing games which sell well. The company's a sponsor. It encourages us and pays for us to go to museums, movies, and on short trips, so we can be inspired. So everyone's happy to work for the company, especially as we get the prestige of being associated with it.
14 years on, and Miyamoto's risen to Nintendo's board. There are many questions I'd want to put to him. Surely he got royalties for his games. And just what is his relationship with Yamauchi? Nintendo's new computer games were successful in Japan. But America was where the real money could be made.
See that? Left right to the top.
Seattle, home to Nintendo America, where the company's fortunes skyrocketed.
Oh, yes!
Miyamoto's first game was The Key. David Sheff, an expert on Nintendo, told me the story.
So when Nintendo arrived in America, it was arcades like this that really predominated the video game industry. There was no home industry to speak of. In those days, you look at this and it brings us back.
I remember this.
Nintendo's first entry into this world was when they came with the Donkey Kong game, Miyamoto's first game. Put a bread box inside to collect the coins, and within the first couple hours, the whole system shut down because there were so many quarters in there.
Game arcades around America were soon clamouring for Donkey Kong. It was Nintendo's first hit game in the US.
It's Friday night in the Burbs. We're just outside of Seattle. This is the Spot Tavern, which is where they stocked the first Donkey Kong arcade game when it arrived in the States. I don't know if they will, but I'm going to pop in and see if anyone can remember anything about it. Hello.
Hi.
How you doing? My name's
Good.
Libby.
Nice to meet you, Scott.
Scott, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Did they just come in one day and dump the machine down? And
Yes, they came in here, they dumped the machine down, and they asked my boss, are you willing to have Donkey Kong in here? And he was willing to say yes.
It's hard to imagine, but when it came out, I was rather young, and we played it all the time. There were no guns at Donkey Kong.
Certainly weren't.
Donkey Kong was the first ever arcade game to have a storyline. Mario was the central character, and his debut proved so popular that Nintendo put him in more and more games.
Mario! Mario!
Miyamoto's creation Mario made over $8 billion for Nintendo. Nintendo wanted to get out of the arcades and into people's homes, and it was the phenomenally popular character Mario who helped them achieve it.
This is where it all began.
Oh, look at that, Nintendo 8-bit. So this was the first one, was it?
The first one, collector's item.
So why this? Why did this work?
Yamauchi understood that it was all about what was inside the box. And inside this box at the time was incredibly sophisticated graphics, incredibly sophisticated control.
What was also inside the box was a coded microchip, allowing only Nintendo games to be played. It was the perfect money generator for Yamauchi.
Will your family be the first to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System?
The system came with a gimmick robot, and as kids clamoured for Mario's games at $50 a go, they had to buy the system that played them at $99.
To open columns so you get to the dynamite before it explodes.
Other companies' games and computer systems were simply locked out. The strategy won Nintendo 95% of the market, but it also brought accusations of unfair competition.
The Nintendo Entertainment System, the first to move video action off the TV screen.
I wanted to question the men who led Nintendo America through the boom time and fought the legal battles.
So on the way to Nintendo America HQ, good English weather they've laid on for us, as you can see. Howard Lincoln is the former vice president, and he's the guy that I'm going to be talking to. Hi, Libby from the BBC, here to see Howard Lincoln. Thank you.
Howard.
Hi, Howard.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Libby. How are you doing?
Nice to meet you, Libby.
And these are games testers. That must be a lot of people's dream job. Get paid to just sit and play games.
Yeah. Howard was a hardened Seattle lawyer when he was recruited. He would need all his legal skills over the next 20 years as Nintendo fought numerous lawsuits from rivals, licensees, and even the Federal Trade Commission. Yamauchi had persuaded his son-in-law Arakawa to head Nintendo America, and he needed a tough partner. Howard and Arakawa soon earned a reputation in business circles for their combative style.
Nintendo became the success it was because of Arakawa and Lincoln joining forces and coming through, and it was like a take no prisoners, annihilate the enemy, do whatever it takes to succeed. They were kind of the bad boy renegades, and they enjoyed the attention that they got.
When I met him, I was 40, he was 32. We were pretty young then.
How did Mr. Yamauchi persuade his son-in-law to get involved? Because I've heard that he took him out and got him drunk.
Well, you know, the amazing thing is that when Mr. Arakawa first came to this country, we had no idea of video games, the U.S. market, any of that. He had to learn all of it from scratch. He was the kind of guy that when he got into something, he just continued to work and to work and to work until he had mastered it. So in this company, he knew every single thing that every employee did.
Howard and Arakawa's tactics came under scrutiny in 1989 when Nintendo of America was accused of monopolizing the market and forcing up its prices by up to 30%.
We haven't done anything wrong here. What we've done in the last 3.5 years is to single-handedly recreate a dead industry. We have resurrected the home video game business.
The Federal Trade Commission launched an inquiry. It was alleged that Nintendo was using its lockout chip strategy to stop competitors making rival games. And the company was also accused of pressuring retailers to stock only Nintendo.
Nintendo implicitly or explicitly says, you sell someone else's product, and we are going to cut back your allocations. We had too many examples of that provided to us.
Under such pressure, Nintendo America agreed to change its practices.
The Federal Trade Commission, they felt that we had overstepped the line. We reached an accommodation and a settlement with them, and we were embarrassed by that. And we made certain that we didn't do the same thing again.
Nobody's going to seriously believe, though, that a company that's run by a lawyer like yourself and that you wouldn't know exactly what was being said by your sales force. Wasn't that a policy to threaten people to a certain degree?
No, I like to compete, and I like to compete aggressively. And I think that spirit, if it's at the top, permeates down to all of the employees. And sometimes salespeople can say some strange things. And they
threatening
get pretty
things,
aggressive.
or how?
Or, you know, gee, if they don't carry this product, or don't do this, or don't do that, I told them that they'd have a bad time, or something like that.
Are you distancing yourself from those comments?
My point is, here was a business that was making a lot of money, that had a large market share, and that tends to bring out lawsuits, competitors who go after you, claiming that you violated the antitrust laws. We won all of those lawsuits.
What will the future bring from Nintendo?
In America, the knives were out, and Nintendo did make some concessions in its business practice.
Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!
But in 2002, they didn't get off so lightly. Nintendo received a whopping £92 million fine from the European Commission for price fixing.
Now you're playing with power!
Nintendo hit controversy again when they bought Seattle's baseball team, the Mariners. Anti-Japanese feeling was then running high in America, and it was a PR disaster.
Buying the baseball team was a complete fantasy fulfillment for Arakawa and Howard Lincoln. Here they were at the top of their game. Their company was making $1 billion profit a year. They could do no wrong. They had 90% of the market. And, you know, somebody else might go out and buy themselves a new car. Those guys bought themselves a baseball team.
Howard Lincoln now spends most of his time as proud chief executive of the Mariners.
I get called all sorts of names. For example,
We went to survey his empire.
I keep a list of these names, and they're great names. I've been called money-grubbing, soulless leech. I've been called a member of baseball's axis of evil.
Wow, look at that. That's amazing.
Well, there's something, isn't there?
Here's the man.
So, we put this picture up of Mr. Yamauchi, and these were his comments when we opened Safeco Field.
I acquired the Seattle Mariners as a gesture of goodwill to the citizens of the Pacific Northwest. My hope is that Safeco Field will be the home of the Mariners for generations to come. Hiroshi Yamauchi, Kyoto, Japan, July 15th, 1999.
You could also sit outside.
The Mariners are now worth $385 million, but Yamauchi has never been to see the team he owns.
That's a great view.
One of you jokers goes by the name Mario.
It's me! 15 years ago, Nintendo dominated the video game market with a 90% share. Nowadays, it's closer to 30%. Why? Some industry insiders have told me the company has failed to anticipate the success of Sony's PlayStation 2, which currently outsells Nintendo's GameCube by 6-1. Others believe that Nintendo's current decline parallels the breakup in Mr. Yamauchi and Mr. Arakawa's relationship.
Super Mario Sunshine! When you come out feeling better, sky is blue, you said forever.
Arakawa left Nintendo 2 years ago amid rumours of a split with Yamauchi. We asked Nintendo if we could interview him, but they asked us respectfully not to make contact. Undeterred, I went to Hawaii, where he now lives, to persuade him to talk to me. I asked Henk Rogers, the games publisher, who knows Arakawa personally, for some advice.
So what do you think Mr. Yamauchi's ideal scenario would have been concerning his son-in-law?
He wanted to see Arakawa become more like him, become tougher, and take over the company and be Mr. Yamauchi, which is basically impossible. I think that they had a difference of opinion about the direction the company should go. And so I don't know the details, and I'm kind of afraid to. I wouldn't ask him to his face what's the reason. I just know that it has happened.
Surprisingly, Arakawa and his wife Yoko, Yamauchi's daughter, were quite happy to speak to me. They spend their retirement in Seattle and Hawaii, where they're building a new house on an exclusive golfing estate.
We love playing golf.
And who's best?
We are about the same. We are
Diplomacy.
12 or 13 handicap.
That's not bad. That's great. It's certainly very beautiful.
We surprised two builders sunning themselves, and Yoko was obviously a little annoyed. Her moving in date had been delayed because they were behind schedule.
Finish quickly as possible. Nice trellis. You're going to trail plants around them? Yeah. Okay, that's about 7 times bigger than my flat.
And this is the great room.
Yeah?
We are going to have a big TV and fireplace.
That will be a big TV.
And
for playing Nintendo games.
I wanted to ask Mr. Arakawa and Yoko about rumours of a family fallout, but they were so welcoming it seemed a little impolite.
Oh, of course, yeah. Oh, it looks like a stingray.
Yeah.
So why was it that you left Nintendo?
I think game business is a very tough, difficult business, and I worked more than 20 years, and I think we are ready to retire.
And what did you think of his decision to leave, Yoko?
I think that's kind of, he works like more than, like 3 times more than most people, and I think it's a tough business, and I think he deserves it.
Mr. Arakawa had obviously put the world of computer games far behind him. But I decided to press him on his relationship with Nintendo boss, Mr. Yamauchi.
Do you speak to your father-in-law very often? I mean, he doesn't come over here very often, does he? You understand?
Yeah, Mr. Yamauchi's life is all business, and if it's not business, he won't come here.
Really? Not even to see his family?
No. We invited him many times to Hawaii, but if it's business, he doesn't mind coming here, but if it's not business, why should I come?
He's still thinking business, 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 even at the ripe old age of 76, and he's still very much in control of the company.
I think so. He will continue to think about Nintendo until he die, I think.
So what sort of man is your father, Mr. Yamauchi?
He's not like a typical like dad you you play with, or I get to know him, you know, like after I got married, and I like him as a person, but I don't think he's the type of the man I would marry.
My time was running out, so I couldn't avoid the difficult question about why Nintendo had wanted to keep me away.
And when we spoke to Nintendo, they weren't very keen on us speaking to you, which is strange if they are so grateful for what you've done, and you were such a great ambassador for them. Why would they not be keen for us to talk to you?
I don't know about that. They are not keen for you to meet me?
They wanted to control who we spoke to, and when we said we wanted to meet you, they said that they couldn't put us in touch with you. So
I don't know.
I'm not sure. But there was no ill feeling, there's no reason for that to be the case as far as you're concerned.
I wasn't put off by Nintendo's attempts to discourage us from talking to Mr. Arakawa. In fact, there was another controversy involving Nintendo to be investigated. Flashing lights and striking graphics are the lifeblood and entertainment in video games. But there's a downside. Scientists have established a clear link between playing video games and photosensitive epilepsy. That's seizures brought on by flashing lights or repeated spatial patterns in video games. According to research, around 3% of the population could be susceptible to these seizures, which can be fatal. Young people are particularly at risk, and Nintendo is under fire over what it's done about the problem. Joey Roccaforte collapsed 10 years ago after playing the Nintendo game Mega Man X at his home near New Orleans. I went to meet his parents.
Can you tell me what Joey was like before this happened?
He was a very outgoing, athletic kid. I mean, he loved to play sports. He made a lot of friends. And then when he had the first seizure, that all changed.
They came home one Sunday to find Joey lying on the floor.
We had no idea what had happened, but when we rolled him over, he had been foaming, and he was not conscious. His eyes were open, but there was no communication. It was a blank stare. So we called the paramedics who came, and that's the first question they asked me. Had he been playing video games? And I said, yeah. Why? And they said, we get these calls all the time. He had a seizure.
In a product liability lawsuit, Rockefeller claims in 1994 he was... Joey is now 26 and is suing Nintendo. He lost an initial case, but the judge ordered a retrial after finding Nintendo twice in contempt for not disclosing information to the court. He's still waiting for that second chance.
It is the dirty little secret of the video game industry, and quite frankly, I believe they're scared to death, win, lose, or draw in this case.
But Joey is just one of the clients being represented by Rick Trahant against Nintendo. In another of these cases, Rick is campaigning to actually get Nintendo to make their games safer.
Nintendo has made precious little effort to address the problem as opposed to defending the problem through litigation. They have spent countless dollars defending lawsuits brought on behalf of their own consumers who have alleged to have an epileptic seizure as a result of playing one of their games.
Rick has amassed internal Nintendo documents, including more than 10,000 pages cataloguing seizure complaints, and others showing that Nintendo knew specific games could be a danger as early as 1990. But Rick says this is something they just won't confirm.
Nintendo, through its corporate representatives over the course of the past decade in these lawsuits, has consistently testified that they have no way of knowing which games or which portions of games might be more inclined to trigger seizures in susceptible individuals.
But Rick eventually unearthed an internal letter from a Nintendo customer service employee, Jerry Sarvas, which he says tells a very different story.
We came into possession of the letter from Mr. Sarvas to a gentleman whose son had had a seizure while playing a video game.
Right.
And simply in 1990 said, here are the games that your son, who is susceptible to video game-induced seizures, can play, and here are the ones that he should steer clear of.
So that wasn't a standard Nintendo response then, obviously?
It absolutely was not. And to this day, it is very much a stark deviation from the typical manner in which Nintendo representatives respond to complaints.
I tracked down Jerry Sarvas, who no longer works for Nintendo. He says when he worked in the company's customer relations department, queries about epilepsy led him to ask Nintendo's R&D experts a straight question.
What games have you heard about in regards to epilepsy? Which games should we tell them not to play?
The Nintendo R&D experts gave him a list of games. But before this information was released to customers, Mr. Sarvas says Nintendo lawyers reduced the number of games listed.
It was a pretty sizable list. Each game represents hundreds of thousands of units out there on the market. And if you have a list of 30-some games as opposed to 12 or 15, that's going to cut into your profits.
Mr. Sarvas says Nintendo soon decided to stop releasing the names of games that might trigger seizures as complaints grew. I asked Howard Lincoln whether Nintendo had acted correctly.
Nintendo first became aware of this photosensitive epilepsy issue many years ago. And as soon as it became aware of it, it took steps in Japan in terms of the manufacture of games, as well as taking steps in the warning and in instruction manuals and whatnot. Am I, as a parent, as a grandparent, satisfied that Nintendo has done everything it could to make sure that its products are safe and that consumers are warned, and that we did that as soon as we knew about it? You bet. I wouldn't be at Nintendo. I wouldn't be connected with anybody that would, that would expose anybody to that kind of risk.
In the UK, television programmes are regulated to reduce the risk of them triggering a seizure. The ITC guidelines set limits on flashing images and spatial patterns. There are no guidelines at all in the video game industry. Potential problems in programmes and video games can be detected by a machine developed at Birmingham's Aston University by Professor Graham Harding.
Okay.
We took him 6 Nintendo games to test.
So this game, Graham, Mega Man X, which was the one that Joey Roccaforte was playing when he had his seizures, did this pass or fail your test?
This game failed the test on 2 things. One flashes and the other on a repetitive pattern. You can see the bright flashes occurring, and you can see that there's 4 within a second. So of course, as soon as this occurs, it triggers and crosses the guideline and then fails quite dramatically, and then fails again a short period later. If you look, there's this high contrast pattern along the top here, which comes on and goes off, and each time it comes on, it triggers the computer and fails the guidelines.
What about this game, Graham, which is Mario Kart Double Dash that you can get in the shops now? How did this fare?
This one failed, as you can see. Again, it crossed the division line there, and you can see why it failed, that this change in pattern is actually producing a series of repetitive luminance changes.
The computer industry doesn't apply ITC guidelines, so other companies may have games that fail the test. Out of the 6 Nintendo games we tested, 4 failed, and 2, Super Mario Bros. 1 and Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, passed the UK guidelines.
Where's the responsibility lie in this situation?
In my opinion, the industry should apply the broadcast guidelines because they've been shown to work, and the risks to children would disappear.
Now, they do put warnings somewhere in this box, don't they? Are they adequate, do you think?
75% of those at risk will not know they're photosensitive. So, yes, you're helping a quarter of them, but 3/4 of them won't know until they have their first seizure.
And also, this is the warning booklet, isn't it? I mean, it's really small print, and it's not the first thing a child's going to go for when they open the box.
No, it would be better if the warning was on the outside of the box.
Probably the most revealing insight into the business of video games is a recent document from 1999. In it, games engineers in Japan said they didn't want any regulation of sequences because the games would be made less exciting. We put what we'd found out to Nintendo. They dispute the claim that they haven't addressed the problem. They said they provided warnings to consumers in 1991 and have applied internal guidelines, modelled on those used in the Japanese TV industry, to their game design since 1998. Nintendo said that they are aware of Professor Harding's testing system and the UK TV guidelines. They say they would evaluate any device that may reduce the risk of seizures. Nintendo added that they couldn't comment on any current court cases in America. The Nintendo personalities which saw the company through the glory years of the 1980s and 90s, Mr. Arakawa, Mr. Lincoln and Mr. Yamauchi, are now taking a back seat. But what about the once so humble games maestro, Mr. Miyamoto? He's transformed into an unlikely rock star figure, adored by fans wherever he goes, like at this visit to a London shop last year.
We've had here the likes of David Bowie, Marilyn Manson, The Darkness, but the response this guy got when he came out was probably bigger than any response they got. It was just phenomenal.
Fans jostled for Miyamoto's signature. One young fan, Richard Easton, queued all night outside the shop in the cold to meet his hero.
So the first 10 people got this stand by Miyamoto, and just to show that I was one of the first 10 people, they actually gave you one of these little arm wristbands.
I was just getting my ticket for the train to go home, and he just turned up to be standing next to me waiting for the train. So I approached him and we talked for 15 minutes about games. He just seemed like a really modest bloke, really, really nice bloke. I've never met a nicer man.
Next stop for me, Hollywood. At the height of its power, Nintendo earned as much as all the American movie studios combined, and made more profit than any of them. I'm meeting Carl Johnson, a film student and Miyamoto's #1 fan. He runs an internet site called Miyamoto Shrine, and if anyone can tell me about Miyamoto and his role at Nintendo, it's Carl.
So what is it that you love so much about Miyamoto's games?
Miyamoto makes games unlike any other video game designer. He creates virtual playgrounds where you can lose yourself, in a childlike wonder.
Well, Miyamoto's one thing, but there wouldn't be Nintendo with just Miyamoto. What do fans think of Mr. Yamauchi, the boss?
It's sort of a good cop, bad cop kind of thing.
Right.
Where you have Yamauchi, he's the bad cop behind the scenes doing sort of the hard-nosed things that he thinks will benefit the business in. And you've got Miyamoto, who is making the games and doing the wonderful things and giving the public what they want.
But he doesn't always give the public what they want. Carl took me to play Super Mario Bros. 2. It was expected to be another Miyamoto masterpiece, to follow his massive hit, Super Mario Bros. 1.
Super Mario is back!
Super Mario Bros. 2 was a big US seller in October 1988. Mario fans snapped it up, and Nintendo reaped the profits. But many were disappointed when, far from being made from scratch, Nintendo had taken an existing game, Doki Doki Panic, and simply changed its characters for Mario ones.
It doesn't have the Mario Miyamoto stand.
No. So why not did they bring it out when it's so inferior to the others?
They needed a product for Christmas, and Mario Brothers 3 wasn't ready yet. So Mario Brothers 2 was a really great way of purchasing a pre-existing engine. And a video game engine is basically a bunch of code that sort of defines what the game already is.
Yes.
And then putting their characters into that pre-existing
Wow, so
engine.
they basically just put faces onto blank characters.
Right.
So that's pretty interesting what Carl was just saying there about the game that the fans weren't entirely happy with. Because it kind of says that behind the fun and the magic and the face of Nintendo that they want us to see, the fans at least recognise that there are hard business strategies at work, and somebody somewhere is making a lot of money out of them.
I wanted to find out the secret of Miyamoto's talent and just how he's benefited from the vast profits made from his games. So I headed for Sonobe near Kyoto, where he grew up. His Quest games capture the spirit of childhood adventure. He says the inspiration came from the countryside and sites near his home he explored as a child.
You can just imagine a young Miyamoto when he got out of school coming up here and playing around with all these sculptures. It looks so much like the graphics for Zelda, it's uncanny.
We gate-crashed a coming-of-age ceremony at Miyamoto's old school.
Hello, konnichiwa. Konnichiwa. Do you know the man who invented Donkey Kong?
Mr. Miyamoto.
Yeah, Mr. Miyamoto. And what do you think of the fact that Shigeru Miyamoto, that famous man who invented Mario, comes from Sonobe?
I'm proud of him. His games are world famous.
Yes, can I speak to Mr. Miyamoto's secretary, please? Yeah.
it was time to put questions to the man himself.
So Mr. Miyamoto said yes to an interview. I also asked Mr. Yamauchi. As yet he said no, but at least we'll get to find out what Miyamoto's got to say.
Thousands of miles away in Hollywood, Carl had some tough questions for Miyamoto. So before I went to Nintendo, I chatted with him over the internet.
Hey Carl, how you doing?
Hey, good to see you again, Libby.
Have you got your questions ready?
Yes, I actually do.
Fire away then.
I was kind of curious as to the whole Super Mario Brothers 2 Doki Doki Panic thing. I would like to know more about the story behind that and why, instead of building a game from scratch, they used a pre-existing game and put Mario characters into it.
Okay, and anything else?
Yes, actually, I would like to know, since Miyamoto has been on the board, I want to make sure he's still getting hands-on with the games, and I'm just curious as to how much personal input he has on the games.
I'll definitely ask him that, Carl. Is that it?
Yeah, that's about it. I can't wait to hear what his responses were.
Okay, well, I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Nintendo has recently moved to new offices on the outskirts of Kyoto.
So that's the mighty Nintendo. It's quite plain. Looks like a private hospital. So I can't quite believe that this is a games company. It's the quietest office building I've ever been in my life. It's the shiniest. The artwork looks like something out of an old people's home. So Yuka, where is Mr. Yamauchi's office? Right, through that door. Can we go and see him?
No, I don't think he's here today.
Oh, isn't he? Oh, that's a shame. I've been trying to meet him and he seems to keep slipping away from me. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Miyamoto, thank you for the interview. How do you feel about having reached a kind of level of celebrity, not just in Japan but across the world? Are you comfortable with that kind of attention?
I feel very embarrassed when strangers come up to me or ask for my autograph. I don't feel comfortable about that. But my ambition was to have my games used by many people. That's why I joined Nintendo, to be able to fulfill that ambition.
So Carl has given me some questions to put to Mr. Miyamoto, and if I don't do it, he'll kill me, so here we go. Mr. Miyamoto, apparently American fans were disappointed with Mario Brothers 2. Did you have much input into it? Because they think you didn't. They think it was similar to Doki Doki Panic.
It's Super Mario 2.
I was involved in making Doki Doki Panic as well. I understand that real Mario fans are not fond of the flavours it contains, but I did take part in making it. The American version of Super Mario 2 was made by modifying Doki Doki Panic, which was launched in Japan.
I think that's what Carl thought you did.
That was a real fanatic's question.
Oh, was it? Hey, well done, Carl. Carl's second question is, what is your role now? Because fans are concerned that you don't have enough input into the games. Now you're in a more supervisory role.
I'm involved in the making of some games, and I take a supervisory or advisory role for the others. I wasn't deeply involved in any recently launched games, so I'm thinking of launching my own game soon. The company knows that I'm more of use in making games than in managing employees, so don't worry.
Now for some difficult questions. What about his relationship with Yamauchi? And is he still a salaryman?
Nintendo became so successful off the back of Mr. Yamauchi's strategy and your creativity. What is the relationship like between you and Mr. Yamauchi?
Because I'm younger than Mr. Yamauchi, for him, I'm like a son rather than like a colleague or a rival. I'm from the first generation which Mr. Yamauchi treated very generously, as if we were his children. Sometimes I brought a new idea to him. He liked the idea and gave me permission to work on it on my own initiative. He was a brilliant sponsor for me.
Mr. Yamauchi has made
billions and billions of dollars as the president of Nintendo, but I understand that you forfeited royalties for these games and stayed as a salaryman. Surely that was crazy thing to do.
I like my work. To be honest with you, I've always been given enough money to spend on my projects. I think I'm most fortunate that I can spend as much money as I want on what I enjoy doing most. I don't have to shoulder the risk with regard to my trade. Taking a risk means earning a lot of money, but I don't have to.
Well, I'm still not sure whether Mr. Miyamoto is in the same outrageous fortune bracket as Mr. Yamauchi, but he certainly seemed happy with his lot. But what of the future for Nintendo without Mr. Yamauchi? Can it recover lost ground?
Sony should never assume that market share is cast in stone.
Nintendo was a small company when I joined, and now it's a big company. For Nintendo to continue to grow, it cannot be the family company, I think.
However, their fortunes may rest heavily on the outcome of the court case on product safety grounds. Such is their influence that a defeat would be a big blow for the whole industry. But one thing's for sure, Nintendo will still be making games for many years to come.
Walmart, that's who'll be getting the outrageous fortunes treatment next week at 9 here on BBC Three. Next tonight, it's EastEnders.